Today, we're going to be using our Prang washable art markers to create an amazing drawing of art supplies. So you're going to need some paper, some washable markers, a permanent marker, and a pencil to start. Aren't these the cutest things ever? And yours are going to be even more amazing. We are going to do some practice drawing first. That's called sketching. You can sketch or practice draw on a piece of scrap paper. You could sketch on a dry erase board. That's my favorite. Or even in a sketchbook. We'll begin by making drawings first before adding color. I'm going to draw in my Prang sketchbook. I'm going to use a permanent marker. You could use a marker or a pencil. This is just practice. Let's draw a pencil first, a big one. I'm going to start with a diagonal line and then another diagonal line, making it look like a capital A. But instead of using a horizontal line to go across, I'm using a curved or bent line. To close the bottom, I'm going to use a zigzag line. And already it looks like the top of a pencil. Let's draw two vertical lines that go down. And this will help us decide how tall to make our pencil. I'm going to make a matching or parallel line that goes down. These lines are vertical because they go up and down. And to close it, I'm using a curved line for the eraser and a couple more curved lines for the little metal part that's called the ferrule. When you're finished practice drawing your pencil, let's try practice drawing a glue bottle. We're going to start with a tiny little oval and then two curved lines that come from that tiny little oval. One on one side, one on the other. To close it, I'm going to use a curved line, not a straight line, because this part of the glue bottle, the nozzle, is rounded and not flat. Starting at that bottom corner, I'm drawing two short lines, one on each side, that go away from the nozzle of the glue bottle and then come down with two matching vertical lines. I'll close it with a curved line. Again, because a glue bottle is round, we have to use a rounded or a curved line. Using some vertical lines, I'm drawing the ridges in the glue bottle. Now let's draw the bottle itself. Starting at that bottom corner, I made a short diagonal line coming away from the nozzle. Decide how tall you want your glue bottle to be, just like we did with the pencil. They're usually not too tall, so my vertical lines don't go down very far. I'm going to close this glue bottle with a curved line because a glue bottle, again, is not flat but rounded. And I'm going to put a little label in it that matches that curved or rounded look. One line here, a copycat or parallel line there, and two vertical lines to close it. And now we have drawn, or almost drawn, a glue bottle. A pencil, a glue bottle. What could we draw next? How about a pair of scissors? Start with a circle. That's for one of the thumb holes for your scissors. And then next to the circle, draw a nice big letter V. And then beside that V, draw another circle. It kind of looks like an owl to me. Now, starting at the top of the V, make a big curved line that goes around the circle. And we're doing the same thing on the other side. And now, can you see it? We have the beginning of the handle. Starting at the bottom of those curved lines, let's make a couple of lines that come down before we close that with a horizontal line. And I'm going to add a little circle right here in the middle. Now let's work on the blade of the scissors. So starting in this corner, I'm going down, but I'm going to make a little curved line here. And then starting at that other corner, I'm connecting. Would you look at that? I almost have a pair of scissors. I'm going to make another line that has a little bend or curve at the bottom before adding that scissor blade. And last, let's draw a watercolor set. I'm going to make a long horizontal line that stretches from one side of my paper to the other. And then I'm going to draw 2 short lines that come down. If at any point you need to practice some more, then just replay the video. Or if I'm going too fast, you can always press the pause button so that we can all get caught up with one another. I'm going to draw another horizontal line close to the bottom, and then I'm going to add some little ovals for all of the little watercolor pans in my paint tray. So you can add as many as you like, but notice that my oval is kind of tall. It almost goes to the top and to the bottom of my little watercolor tray. To make a paintbrush, I'm going to draw a nice long line for the handle of the paintbrush. And then I'm going to curve the bottom of it a little bit and put a little bend at the top before making the rest of the handle. Did you know that on a paintbrush there's also the metal part that's called a ferrule, which is the same name that we used when we were talking about a pencil? So those little metal pieces on pencils and paintbrushes, they're called ferrules. Now this is my favorite part. I like to draw organic shapes or wiggly wobbly shapes that can be found in nature, like a big old paint splat or a water drop. And I'm drawing those right next to my paintbrush. Now, if there was anything that we drew that you feel like you need to practice some more, then do it. But if you're feeling pretty good, let's go ahead and grab a piece of paper and a pencil and draw. Let's draw our pencil first. If you remember, it had 2 diagonal lines like a capital A. It had a curved line right where the lead of the pencil was, and then a zigzag line. Now you're drawing with a pencil. That way, if you draw something you're not happy with, you can easily erase. I'm drawing with a permanent marker because that way you can see what I'm drawing. When you are all finished with your amazing drawing, you're going to trace over all of your pencil lines with a permanent marker. So you are using a pencil so you can erase if you need to. That's why you're drawing with something different, but when your masterpiece is complete, then you'll catch up with me and draw with a permanent marker. I'm going to actually draw a couple of lines on my pencil because some pencils have a little bit of a ridge to them that make them easier to hold. Okay, I'm going to rotate my paper because I'm drawing a smattering of art supplies and I want them to look like they're scattered all over my sheet of paper. So I like to rotate my paper so I can have a different composition for my art supplies. Let's draw that glue bottle. I've got my 2 lines that come down from that tiny oval. I'm of course closing the nozzle with a curved line because the glue bottle is round, not flat. A couple of lines to show the ridges on the glue bottle nozzle. And then we're making the cap. So I'm drawing a couple of lines coming down before closing it. Now, if you want to draw more than one glue bottle or more than one pencil, I say go for it. Right now, we're just kind of going through all of the supplies that we drew before. Now, I'm making those 2 lines that come away from the glue bottle before making the vertical lines that determine how tall my glue bottle will be. And I'll add a curved line because you guessed it, it's not flat, it's round before adding my label. Now, if you want to write something on the label, you can, but we may be adding some faces to these art supplies in a little bit, so you might want to leave it blank for now so you have a little bit of room. Now that we've got our glue bottle finished, let's rotate our paper so we can have another art supply to add to our composition. So I did add a couple of curved lines to my glue bottle. You are the artist. The choice is yours. Next up, let's see, what should we draw now? How about we draw that pair of scissors? If you remember, it was a circle, a letter V, another circle before we draw the lines of the handle. I make a curved line that goes around the circle, and then one on the other side. If you want to, you could practice your composition or the placement of things in your sketchbook, on a dry erase board, or on a piece of scrap paper. I'm drawing mine right away on my paper that I plan to finish my masterpiece, but you're the artist, so you can decide how you want to go about approaching your drawing. I'm going to go ahead and finish my scissor blade, and then I'm going to add a little curved line here, and then I need to draw the other blade on the other side. Once that's complete, then we can rotate the paper and draw our paint tray next. Okay, now when I rotate the paper, I really have to decide where I should place my paint tray. This is called deciding my composition or the placement of things. I have to think about, where do I have room? Because as I fill up my work of art with all these art supplies, I'm starting to run out of space. Okay, if you recall, the watercolor tray is like a big, long rectangle. And I like to draw a little line at the bottom. This is for where the paintbrush goes. And then I'm going to be using some ovals to draw the pans of paint. Remember, these aren't very small ovals like the top of that glue bottle. These ovals go from the bottom to the top of the watercolor tray. So I'm making sure to really imagine in my mind what that oval would look like before drawing it. You can draw as many as you can squeeze in onto your tray. And once that's finished, I like to sometimes add a little bit of lines to show that the paint is in the tray and that it's kind of sticky and wet. So to show that texture, I use a little bit of curved lines. Now let's add our paintbrush. We're going to start with the handle of the brush. I bent the line a little bit at the bottom, just like we practiced. My paintbrush gets a little wider as the handle moves down. I'll add that little line for the ferrule or the metal part of the brush. And maybe some bristles. Not maybe, we really need bristles. The paintbrush needs its hair or its ballerina tippy toes, after all, in order to paint, which we're going to be using a paintbrush, so this is kind of appropriate that we have one on our work of art. Once your paintbrush is complete, then we can dive into making those organic shapes. Those shapes that are to show the splats of paint or splats of water that we might have on our paper. I might fill up my whole background with splats and splatters of paint, or I might just draw it in a little section next to the tray. The choice is yours. One thing we didn't draw earlier, but we can draw now, is a crayon. It's easy. You're going to start the same way you did with a pencil, except at the top you're going to make a short horizontal line before coming back down. And then at the bottom we're going to give this capital A some cute little feet before making our two vertical lines that come down. And once we have determined how tall our crayon is, this crayon looks pretty big when you compare it to the other art supplies, you're going to close it with a curved line, again, because it is round. And I'll use a couple of curved lines to add the paper label. Rotate your paper and let's try drawing a glue stick. Begin with a big oval. That's different than the tiny one we draw for the glue bottle. Two vertical lines that come down. That's what helps decide how tall our object will be. This is a cylinder shape or form. Add a curved line at the bottom. And then I'm going to draw a curved line close to the bottom. That's the little dial that you use to make the glue come up. And then I'll make the cap. Easy! Now I have my paper filled with art supplies. If you have room, now that you know the steps, you can add some more art supplies. I decided that I had some empty space and that I wanted to fill that empty space with a couple of extra things like this pencil, maybe a little rectangle for an eraser. I definitely think I need some more paint splotches. You're the artist. You get to decide how can you fill your composition or the placement of things in your art supplies work of art. Once you're finished filling up your work of art, I'm just going to add another glue stick and maybe some more pencils and perhaps fill the whole background with some paint splats. When that's complete, then you need to decide if you want to draw cute little faces on your art supplies or leave your work of art the way that it is. A good way to decide what you want to do is to grab that sketchbook again, or maybe a dry erase board or scrap paper, and practice draw along with me. So I have my pencil drawing from before. I'm going to draw a couple of circles for eyes. Maybe add a couple of smaller circles inside, one at the top and one at the bottom before coloring it in. Now there's tons of different ways to make cartoon faces. I'm just showing you one way to do it that you might want to practice, but if you know other ways, I say go for it. I'm going to give my little pencil some tiny little stick arms with some cute little stick fingers and maybe some legs with feet. So he looks like he's ready for a cute little pencil hug. He's so ready to draw and create. Maybe on this one, I could draw a winking face with one of those same eyes that are open and a curved line to show the other is closed. A wide smile on this one, which makes it different than the one that had a tiny smile, and maybe a cute little baby tooth. It's a baby glue bottle who's winking at you. How funny. I love it. You could always draw two little eyes on your scissors, and then that round dot kind of looks like the nose. So I'm going to add a tiny mouth before giving it some hands. There's tons of different ways to practice draw your supplies before you add them to your drawing. Again, you might want to draw everything with a pencil first. That way you're happy with your drawing before tracing over everything with a permanent marker. And when you're finished tracing over everything with a permanent marker, you might notice that some of your pencil lines are peeking through. I call those peekaboo pencil lines, and I always try to erase them so they don't show up in my artwork. So have fun. Take some time drawing all these cute little faces. Give each one of your art supplies its own special personality. Maybe they're talking to one another. Maybe they're laughing. They're so excited to be creating artwork with you. What will their faces look like? Now, if you want, everything can get a face, or maybe just a few art supplies. The choice is yours. When you are finished drawing and tracing, then it's time to get your washable markers. We'll no longer be using permanent markers. Instead, we're going to be switching to washable markers. That's important. You'll also need a cup of water, just water, and a paintbrush. So you'll need washable markers, cup of water, and a paintbrush. All right, now that I'm almost finished with these faces, let's dive into the next step. To add color, I'm using my Prang washable markers, and check out how I'm coloring in my art supplies. I'm coloring not the whole thing, but just the inside edge. I decided to start with my scissors, and I'm coloring the handle, but I'm not coloring the entire handle. I'm just coloring the inside edge. And once I've gotten the inside edge complete, not only will I do the outside part, but also that of the little round circles for the handle. Notice I didn't color the whole thing because I'm going to be doing that magic trick with my cup of water and my paintbrush. So I don't have to color the whole thing because the water and the paintbrush, they're going to help me fill in the rest. So I'm going to color all of my art supplies, but only on the inside edge. And I like to use the side of my marker when I color because that gives me a nice thick line. That thick line will really come in handy when I use my paintbrush and my water. Now, I don't really color this fast. I did speed up the video just a little bit so you could see that I'm not coloring everything, and I'm also not adding color just yet to the background. But I am coloring the inside edge. I suppose you could call that outlining. When you're all finished with your outlining, make sure to double check that you haven't missed anything. Make sure that even if it's something that's supposed to be white, like your glue bottle, try going around it with gray. Now let's talk about the background. For this background, I decided to do polka dots, but I decided to only use the warm colors. The warm colors are the first 3 colors in the rainbow: red, orange, yellow, and then I also added pink. If you want to use the cold colors, they're the last colors in the rainbow, starting with green, blue, purple. I also have light blue and light green that I could use. But I don't use all of the rainbow because if they get mixed together, they don't look as nice. So you need to decide if you want to use the warm colors like me or the cool colors. And you're going to fill the entire background with polka dots. Some are big dots, some are little dots. The more you add, the better this trick of adding water to our paper to make it into a painting will work. If you filled up your background with drawing, like I did for this one where I drew paint splats everywhere, then you are going to do the same thing that you see me doing here, which is coloring around the inside edge, which means you'll need to do that for all of your paint splats. And this time I decided to use the cool colors, which are green, blue, and purple. Now, when you're finished and you've made sure that you've colored around all of the inside edges, it's time to grab that cup of water and a paintbrush and check it out. You're just going to dip your paintbrush in the water, and then your paintbrush is going to touch the place where you colored with marker. The marker and the water will activate and work together to create a kind of paint. Isn't that amazing? Now, if you paint on top of that marker line, it really does help. If you only paint in the white area, well, there's nothing there to turn into paint. So you need to make sure to activate that marker by putting some water on it and moving the color to where the white area is, and that will fill it all in. I'm trying to stay within my lines and paint neatly, and anytime I do change to a different color that I'm painting, I clean my brush in the water. That way my colors don't get mixed together. So this part, sometimes it looks like, the paint's not working, the marker trick's not working, but it is. It just needs a little bit of time to dry and to activate together. Now that your masterpiece is complete, I know that it's amazing. Let's check out adding a little bit of color to this one with the polka dots. So I like to begin by painting in all of the art supplies first. Again, I add water to activate the marker and turn it into paint. And once that's complete, then I can work on the background. Those colors that I use, the warm colors, the ones that are the first 3 colors in the rainbow, they also have a special name. They're called analogous colors. Analogous colors are ones that sit next to each other on the color wheel, and when they mix together, they look beautiful together. So when I add water, you're going to see what I'm talking about, how beautiful these colors mix together. Now, when you're painting this part, you're just going to paint over everything, all of the dots, so you don't have to worry about the colors mixing. In fact, we want them to mix together. They make a really beautiful color when mixed all together and totally fills in my background. You'll need to let your papers lie flat as they dry completely so they won't drip. I cannot wait to see the amazing works of art that you create. Toodles!